First up is Wicked Part 1, which is an adaptation of the Broadway musical, which is based on The Wizard of Oz. And there are going to be two parts to this review. The first part is for those of you Wicked girlies / stans who most likely have actually already seen the film by the time this review is coming out, because it started previewing last night, and therefore you had tickets to opening night. And for you, I am happy for you. I think this is going to be a beautiful manifestation of the stage musical brought to life on screen, and I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for you because I'm sure you had a great time. And I hope that for you, right? Because this movie is for you. Now, I'm going to address the folks who this movie might not inherently be for, which includes myself. And that's not to say I dislike Wicked. And also, I am operating under the baseline assumption that folks generally know what Wicked is. But in case you don't, it is a retelling of the story of The Wizard of Oz, but it is effectively from the perspective of the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm also going to assume you've seen The Wizard of Oz because I'm not going to wizard-splain to you. But so it is the story of the character who eventually gets labeled the Wicked Witch of the West, and that is Elphaba, aka Cynthia Erivo in this. And it's about her time in school where she meets Ariana Grande's Glinda, or Galinda, who is the good witch, and it's about their actual origin story. It is directed by John M. Chu, who did Crazy Rich Asians. He's done some of the Step Up movies. He did In the Heights. He is very good with musical sequences, etc. It also stars Jeff Goldblum as the Wizard, and then it has Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible, Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero. It also has Ethan Slater, Marissa Bodie, Bowen Yang, and Bronwyn James, and the last few characters you are not going to know unless you have seen the musical, so don't worry about that. So, for those of you that are maybe on the fence or not as familiar with Wicked and haven't seen it a bunch of times, etc., which includes me. I am old enough that I remember when it was previewing, pre-Broadway, and it actually previewed in my home city, and I didn't get to see it or didn't choose to see it, and I could have seen Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel in the originating roles of Elphaba and Glinda. I did not. I kind of regret that. I did eventually see it one time on Broadway, and I went, okay, this is pretty good. The challenge for me, though, is that because it was doing so well, and I didn't get to see it until a little bit later, everybody was singing all the songs. And, I went to art school, and so there were a lot of aspiring actors who are not in the range of Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. And so I came to resent the music, and in that's not necessarily the musical's fault. It's more of like a victim of its own success in that way, in that lots of people have taken up the mantle of thinking they can do the roles and the range of Wicked, and people who can do the roles and the range of Wicked are Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. We'll absolutely give them that. But for me, I've always had just like a little bit of sort of a reaction, kind of my shoulders are scrunching thinking about Wicked. And when I saw they were making a musical, I went, oh my God, we're gonna be stuck with this for another 20 years. So if you were someone who was annoyed by that, if you were someone who's not a fan of musical theater, this is absolutely not for you. It's a 5 out of 5 for people who love the original musical. It's a 0 out of 5 for musical theater fans because it is very much a movie musical, and I give it credit. I think that is the thing it did the best job on. One of my biggest points of criticism when something goes from the stage to the screen is, are you taking advantage of the medium of film? Because if you're going to move to film, you have to make this a different experience because you're missing the live energy of an audience that is being able to react and bounce off actors' energy. So you have to do something to calibrate in other departments. And there are plenty of things, usually plays, honestly, that I've seen that, maybe sometimes they take place in like one room or one set, and then they become a movie and they still do that. And I'm like, then why? I would rather have seen the play a million times over. But John M. Chu knows what he's doing with this stuff, and he made this a very expansive world that like you couldn't pull off this version of it on stage. So it takes place in Shiz University, which is, I feel like a word that is going to get you SEO banned, but it is at Shiz University. Cynthia Erivo plays Elphaba, green-skinned, stands out. Nobody else is like her. Does have magic. She meets Glinda, or Galinda at the time, played by Ariana Grande, and they are complete and polar opposites, and then it is about their kind of budding relationship and their relationship with the world of Oz. Michelle Yeoh's Madame Morrible is my favorite part of this film because, she's just Michelle Yeoh, and she's amazing. But I think everyone in this film is really well cast for, what the roles are. I do have to note, I hope people realize, and there's a reason I emphasize this is a part 1, because I was talking to friends before I got to see this screening, and we were talking about this, and they were like, do you remember this, and this? I said, what on earth are you talking about? Like, I do not remember a single thing that they referenced. And I think the only parts of this musical I remember are from part 1. And part 2 is just a whole different what is happening here. So the kind of qualm I have is that the entire runtime of the musical, the stage musical Wicked, is about 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it's with a 15-minute intermission. The screen version, part 1, is 2 hours and 40 minutes, and there's no intermission. And I know that some of it is because it's, a movie musical and they've added things here and there. But I was like, this is a long movie. This is a very long movie. And I think there are a few bits and pieces we could have trimmed in places just to move it along. 220 would have been the sweet spot. And I know the people who I reviewed this for at first were like, no, give me more, blah, blah, etc. I'm like, you're going to get more. It's going to be in a year. And then you're going to have a 5-hour viewing experience, which might be too much for some of us. So I think that was my kind of big thing. Acting-wise, like I said, I think everyone is very well cast. Cynthia Erivo, for me, really is the anchor of this film. I know it's very much about the dynamic between her and Ariana, and they're supposed to be like co-leads. But it's also Elphaba's story. And I think she brings just a vulnerability and a strength to the role, and also is able to kind of calibrate for, because she is a stage actress in many senses, but she's able to calibrate for the screen in a great way. Ariana is a singer for sure, but and I think she actually does a very good job. I also maybe just don't like the character of Glinda as much. I'm more of an Elphaba, it turns out. Shouldn't be surprising to anyone who actually knows me. So anyway, beautiful, gorgeous world. It's so much attention to detail. I think it gets a little bloated because, they just want to show off every single little thing. There are a couple times where the effects, I'm like, okay, I know this is a $1 movie and like you are spending a lot of money and you are definitely paying attention and trying, but sometimes, you have to be pragmatic and like not everything can afford the $1 treatment. And that's okay. I think Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, oh, that guy can get it, man. He is just, I was like, yeah, all right. Jeff Goldblum is the wizard. It's just, again, casting is the strength of this. Making an expansive world, also amazing. I don't know, though, if you are not a super fan, if this is going to be like the greatest movie musical of all time. I think because we've also, if you have been to a big box store in the however many months, or seen a commercial or eaten anywhere, you've been inundated with materials from Wicked, or if you've just walked outside and see a bunch of people in pink and green, you're like, oh my God, aggressively temper your expectations. Because I do think this is a well done movie, but I'm not going to be like, hey, do you hate movie musicals? This is the one that will convert you. Like that's not where this movie is at. But I do think it's very well done. If you were on the fence and you're like, I'm interested, I think it could be worth seeing. I think it could be worth seeing also on a big screen, because I do think there's like a communal experience a little bit that, it's not the same obviously as live theater, but by seeing it on big screen, also clearly they have, paid attention to every little detail, so you'll get to see it in a more fully realized vision. But if you were like, I don't know, like it's good, but it's not like get thyself to a theater good. So again, because there are 2 different audiences for this, if you are a huge Wicked fan, this is a 5 out of 5 for you. Have fun. I'm sure you're probably seeing it again right now, honestly. If you are about it, I still think it's really well constructed and well acted. I don't know how I feel about, and I can't judge, right, because I haven't seen the second half yet. I don't love the runtime. I again find some of the characters grating, but that's what they're supposed to be, so I'm like, I get that. But I'm going to give it a 3.9 out of 5. My next film this week is Gladiator 2, and while I was fine on Wicked, the musical, the original Broadway musical, if you want to talk about things I am a super fan of, Gladiator is something that I just think it is one of my top films. Thinking about Russell Crowe in that field makes me want to cry, just, the memory of it. And so when they said, we're making Gladiator 2, in an even more violent reaction than to what I said, oh no, we're making Wicked, I said, no, please don't do that. Like, we don't mess with a good thing. Like, on a scale of 1 to things that we just shouldn't make, Gladiator 2 is probably at the top. And I still went into it with like an open mind, because I love the first one. I do like the cast of this. So you've got Paul Mescal, you've got Pedro Pascal, you've got Denzel Washington, Connie Nielsen returns, you've got Joseph Quinn, Fred Heschinger, Derek Jacobi, Matt Lucas. So I was like, okay, I'm hopeful. Oh man, no, it's nothing what I wanted it to be. I don't even know what I wanted it to be because I was so scared. And unfortunately, I think it validated those fears. So it takes place however many years after the first one. Pedro Pascal plays a Roman general. Paul Mescal plays a captured soldier from a group that Pedro Pascal's group effectively conquers in the name of Rome and gets brought back to Rome to compete as a gladiator. Denzel Washington is this everyman turned politician, kind of like back channel dealing character. Joseph Quinn and Fred Hechinger are co-emperors, and then Connie Nielsen plays her character still, who's the daughter of Marcus Aurelius. So, there's political intrigue, and then there's lots of fighting. And I love political intrigue, I love fighting, and yet somehow it doesn't work together in this film. And everyone is trying their best in terms of the actors. I'm not faulting any of the actors on this. They are doing what they were told to do by Ridley Scott. And I'm like, bro, why? You are one of the greatest and you made one of the greatest things of all time. Why did we have to mess with it? The fact that he signed on to do it, and I don't know if it was just somebody owned the rights and was like, we're doing this with or without you, so you might as well do it. He said, okay, fine. Or if he just felt there was more to explore. But without giving too much away, it is a recycled film, right? There's not that much different or interest. The structure of it is similar to Gladiator 1 in the sense of, you have this character in the pits that you are rooting for, and then there's all this political intrigue around them, and they get sucked up into it. So there's a lot of stabby, and then a lot of talky. So I also had not seen the trailer for this because I was like, I know I'm going to see this no matter what, doesn't matter how reticent I am about it. And so I didn't see the trailer, and part of me is glad I didn't, because if you have, you will know some of the sequences, especially fight sequences I'm talking about that apparently were given away. If you have not, do not watch it. Don't watch the trailer and just go in blind if you're going to watch it, but keep listening to this review and decide if you're going to watch it. So I just graded on the fact that it was recycled and also didn't advance anything in a way that I was like, yes, there really was more story to tell. It was just the story of two mad emperors again, and power tripping, and Paul is doing his best, and I think Paul is lovely, but I don't know. It felt a little out of place in time for him and Pedro, actually. I love them both. I think they're wonderful, but their dynamic is just a little modern, especially Pedro's. This is a mixed accent film in the sense of some people are doing accents and some people are just not, or speaking with a slight affixation. Denzel Washington is just Denzel Washington. And honestly, he has earned the right to just be Denzel Washington probably at this point, but I don't know if I would then cast him in the role he's in. He's actually pretty good in it, but it does feel a tiny bit out of place. And they do this thing where you're they're all speaking in English, but how do they all understand each other? And they act as if they're speaking different languages, but it's all just kind of being universally translated. So I'm maybe that's the reason why Denzel speaks like he's Denzel Washington. It's because the universal anyway, if the first Gladiator film is in your top films of all time, I know it's going to be hard to listen to this, but don't go. Just don't. Preserve the memory. Don't go see this film. And it's going to be tempting, and you're probably not going to listen, but I am saying I kind of wish I had not seen this film and I could just leave Gladiator be, because it does continue with some of the direct characters, like Connie Nielsen's character, and some of that storyline continues. It almost feels like it sullies the first one a little bit, and you're like, how did we go from that to this? If you admire the first Gladiator, but it's not in your top films, and you're just like, I just need an action film to turn my brain off, okay, fine, I guess, I'm not going to stop you. There are actually, so the parts I was referencing from the trailer, if you have seen them and know what I'm talking about, there are campy parts in this, mostly fighting related. And I almost wish that it had leaned into that. Instead of trying to be the beautiful, serious, dramatic film that the first one was, I was like, let's go a different direction. Obviously, that doesn't actually make sense for the tonal Gladiator umbrella, but because they already put it in there, I'm like, let's just lean in, right? The two emperor characters are these super wild folks, especially Fred Hechinger's character, and I'm like, let's just go with that, let's go polar opposite. Let's do yin yang to the first Gladiator and be like, now for something completely different. That is not what they did. Even trying to turn my brain off and just be like, okay, this is just an action film, and I do love that on its own. Can I enjoy this? And I struggled, in part because it's just called Gladiator, and I'm like, those are such big Roman sandals to fill. So breaks my heart. I am only going to give this a 3.6 out of 5. And I thought about giving it higher, but I'm like, because you are Gladiator and you've taken that mantle and so many people are involved, you are being held to the standard that you have set for yourself. And that is what you get. So a 3.6 out of 5. If you are, I was actually literally speaking to my father about this. He's like, Gladiator, I love Gladiator. And I was like, Dad, just wait till it's at home. This is not, if you're going to break your heart and not listen to my advice about it, just do it from the comfort of your home. It is a big film, right? This is like Wicked, in which there are details in places and you could want to see it on a big screen, but just bummed me out. So 3.6 out of 5 for Gladiator 2. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, Gladiator 2, but you did this to yourself. The last film I have this week is a much smaller one, and I don't know if folks have heard of it, but I happen to see it. I just wanted to give it a shout out. It is called Hello, Love Again. It is a Filipino film. It's actually the sequel to a film called Hello, Love, Goodbye, which I did not get a chance to see in going in to see this film, which is fine. I was able to perfectly drop into it, so not a problem there. It stars Catherine Bernardo and Alden Richards, who are two of the biggest stars in the Philippines. They are such a delight. Like, they have such a wonderful chemistry together. It is about these two characters who I believe in the last film, it was basically the love story of them getting together. And then this one is about them being kind of ripped apart. Catherine Bernardo plays a character called Joy Marie, who decides to come to Canada to try and get her nursing license in Canada and, live a better life for herself and support her family back in the Philippines. And then Alden Richards kind of follows her along, and it's about their ups and downs of their relationships and splits and back together and all that stuff. And, if you are familiar with international workers, aka like people who are from, other countries who have to go elsewhere in order to support their families, I think this does a really good job of showing the challenges and like dedication of people who are in those roles without, making it a pity party, a woe is them story. It's a really three-dimensional representation of that. It is not in English, it is in Tagalog mostly. There are some English bits, so be prepared to read subtitles. But, if you are Filipino, there's a good chance you've already seen this too, actually. It's kind of like The Wicked of. But I just thought it was really sweet and shockingly emotional, and I did appreciate, like, there's like humor and, they have a chemistry to them. I give them credit. I think the internet calls them Cathtin, but I understand why they are like the top stars of where they are, because they do bring this like vulnerability to these roles. And then there's some like fun in it, and it's just, getting to see the social circles they roll in and just like the silliness of the friend groups. I was like, this movie has a lot going, and I got really invested in their relationship. So it's a kind of a niche recommendation, but if you are a fan of kind of a K-drama, but condensed, because K-dramas usually run really long and, there's a lot of repeating, this moves along very healthily. If you're a fan of like a K-drama or like a Southeast Asian drama, I think this is absolutely worth giving a chance to. I'm just going to put it on your radars.